Good morning, San Diego. I'm just kidding.
We're not in San
We're
Diego.
not.
Good morning.
I was taking that from a Robin Williams when he was like, "Good morning, Vietnam." But I just threw San Diego in there because today, for the first time ever, we have a live audience that we're doing this podcast. Our kids are awake behind us. We asked them to keep their volume down, so that's
Behind the computer.
behind the computer, not behind us. Thanks. But today well, first, good morning.
I said good morning.
Oh, okay, good. Today we're gonna break out a framework called the Conscious Leadership. Well, I say framework, they're a company called Conscious Leadership Group that has a framework around 15 commitments of conscious leadership. And we just want to bring a little bit of light to that on this podcast, keep it short and simple. And then over the next, however long podcast, we're going to really get down to some of our relationship issues and how we've incorporated the conscious leadership tools and resources to help us become closer and also to just to have a deeper level of connection is the word.
You got that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
I'm just letting you run with it.
Yeah,
You're doing a great job on this podcast.
I appreciate it.
I'm here for moral support.
So I'm going to turn it over to Giselle because she actually found this framework years ago.
Yeah, so I was introduced to this framework 3 years ago at a retreat, and it was through, yeah, it was a framework that got introduced first. Then later on that year, like 3 months later, I read the book and I took a course on like the introductory, kind of like how the framework works and how can you use it in your life. Because when you read the book, it seems like it's very much for businesses, which it is. Like that's what the company focuses itself on. So they work mostly with companies, with other businesses. And the book is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And it's this whole concept of we're always living either above the line or below the line. It's like this black, imaginary line. And I came home from the retreat and I remember I had some of the worksheets and I laminated them and then I went on their website. They have a ton of free resources on their YouTube. They, break it down. If you go to their old videos, they break down how to use these resources that they have free on their website. And a lot of them are pretty straightforward, but you do need to have some grasp or understanding of how the framework works. But I remember I brought it home and right away, like I was like, we're gonna use this because I knew that we were not communicating in the best way possible. So I was really excited to try something new to hopefully move our conversations forward instead of like being stuck in the cycle of arguments. And a big thing about this framework is like the whole commitments is basically how do you take responsibility on what's your role in the situation, like what is it that you're doing to continue the situation going. And a lot of that was, shed light on, instead of always putting the blame on someone else, being able to say like, okay, I see where I also took part in the situation, or where, this is also my responsibility to, help fix the situation. But Alex didn't, he participated, not much, but he participated doing these worksheets with me. I also remember introducing it to like my sisters and trying to talk to them about it because I was really excited because I was like, this stuff is life changing. Just reading the book, understanding it after I took the course, and thinking like, this is what so many people are missing in their relationships, is just a way to communicate effectively. And I mean, I still believe that this framework is pretty potent and amazing. And if people knew about it, conversations would look and sound a lot different than they do. And once again, there's very few things that don't pertain to like personal relationships that are more like business focused. but the majority of the framework could be used in any relationship, like, children, spouses, siblings, parents, like all of it. But it is something that you could use it on your own, but obviously is more effective when both parties agree to use the framework. But you can use it at least for yourself, of knowing like how to speak responsibly and effectively to get your point across without, like, one thing that I've learned is like you can't make anybody anything. So if anybody's feeling something, is because of themselves. And more, this framework gives you a way to know that you're not putting blame and you're not pointing fingers. You're saying what you need to say. And if the other person like takes offense to that, then, that's pretty much on them. Like, there's not much you can do about that. Because they talk about like unarguable truths and how you can speak your unarguable truth. So an unarguable truth is something no one can argue with you. So if I tell someone, orange looks good on you, that's an arguable truth. Somebody else can argue that and say orange does not look good on you. But if I say my thought is that orange looks good on you, no one can argue that because it's my thought. So just learning how to speak from your thoughts, from your emotions, from your feelings, it's an unarguable truth. No one can argue that with you because it comes from you. And this is just like one little tiny thing of the framework. There's so much more to it. But in the past year and a half, we've really focused in on using this framework in our relationship. And that's really what's transformed the way we communicate and we talk to each other and the way we do things. And Alex has now listened to the Audible and he's reading the book and he's really stepping up on incorporating in real life situations and using it.
Yeah. I remember back in 2020 when she came and introduced this. Honestly, it was like a different language.
Yeah.
I was really trying to hold the bandwidth and the space, but it was a different language. And it was also a framework and a belief that I was afraid of because there's so much emphasis on curiosity and responsibility
And
and
feelings.
feelings. And, and I like the verbiage that you used in this framework of, a lot of times we cope with a lot of things, but they call it drifting. And I like the terminology because sometimes people don't like certain words, and this framework actually, like Jasil was saying, is like you really learn how to have more intentional conversations, and you're aware of what you're saying. And now that I've experienced that and witnessed it myself, I've been implementing it with the kids, especially like one of the commitments is feeling your feelings, like so feeling your feelings through the whole life cycle of the feeling and how you express that and how you allow that to flow through your body. So I've been using these with the kids, I've been using this with myself. And I've been working with men lately and I've been using a lot of the tools and I've been seeing so much transformation within that. And so it's just something that not only through my relationship with Jasil and now my professional relationship, like my business, it's starting to really click. So I want to get this out in the world. And I was telling Jasil as we were coming up with like an idea yesterday night of like, well, what should we talk about? The conscious leadership. That's something that's really changed our relationship for the better and really sparked some deeper conversations and revealing things, everything that we've talked about up to this point.
Yeah. And one thing I really have enjoyed about this framework is it's not about you being right or wrong or you always being above the line. It's really a way of being an awareness of where you are and how you can talk about that. And when he talks about like drifting, basically like when you're getting away from presence, like how do you bring yourself back to presence and how do you shift and doing these things? It's not about like, oh, I'm going to be perfect every time and I'm going to know how to do this, but through knowing how to do it, you do get better. So at some things you get quicker. And then it's also just recognizing when you're not ready to shift and saying, I'm not ready to shift. Like I am below the line on this issue And that is where I want to be right now. And that is okay too. Like, it's not about, oh yeah, like every time you realize you have a problem, you're going to just all of a sudden shift above the line on the problem and solve it. It's like, it's not about that at all, but it is about being in awareness and being able to communicate that to someone else and saying, hey, like I'm having this issue right now. This is going on and I'm not ready to talk about it, or I'm not ready to shift focus of where my belief is right now. But whenever the time comes, now you have the tools to be able to do that and have that conversation with the person or with yourself or whatever it is, to be able to shift yourself out of that place. So it's really fun to play with yourself, with, like I said, your partners. It's just such a different, like he said, I remember when I introduced this to him, like telling him this is a different language, and that is the point. So many of us lack the language to have these conversations in our relationships. So while we think we're having the conversation and we think we're moving towards solving the problem, we're really just stuck in the same cycle of the same conversations over and over and over throughout the years without shifting out of it. And we're like, why? Like, but we talked about this, and we've discussed this a million times, and we thought we compromised or this and that. And it's like, you need a whole different language for a lot of the issues that are happening. And until you don't learn that different language, you're going to be stuck having the same problems. So it's really a way of expanding that knowledge, that awareness of feelings and emotions and thoughts and communication in general.
Yeah, if you're picking up mouth breathing, Lumi's not feeling well, so she's
Yeah,
Look.
it's just me mouth breathing.
she's a little under the weather and she's mouth breathing over here.
We had our fourth little one wake up and come join us on this podcast.
So now we have 3 of 4. So
If 4 wakes up, it's a party.
we're calling it a cool. We're calling it at that point. You just hear us. No, but I just it's been so fundamental the last year in our relationship, and so I'm excited to share this. And there's so much we can go into now, but I don't want to overwhelm anybody.
It's a lot of different levels and layers, and then there's also like a simplicity to it as well. Like I think that there's like a basic core of it that just makes things very simple, but at the same time, there is like so many different worksheets that you could go through and do and things like that. But
Yeah.
we'll get into it little by little.
I think the one point I just want to say, and it's for me, when I was reading the book and listening to it, the to me, which is a victim mindset, they say the studies show 95% of society lives in a victim mindset. And as I started to think about myself, I'm like, holy crap. And switching from like the victim mindset, the life is happening to you, to like you create the life that you want by me, is just responsibility. And then different ways where I've lacked responsibility in my life, specifically with my thoughts and my patterning and my beliefs. And so it opened that was number one. And I talk to men all the time about responsibility, and are you willing to take responsibility for the situation that you're in? And it's changed people's outlook.
And like, even in the most serious of circumstances, like in the things that you're like, for sure there's a victim and then there's a perpetrator and there's no way around that. Like, even in those situations, like this framework is able to turn that around and see that everyone plays a role in every situation, no matter what. And I know that some people are going to be like, yeah, no way. And it's like, there is, but the key here is being able to be curious enough to see that, and also know that life isn't ever happening to you. You are co-creating with life, and that everything that happens is here to teach us something, to show us something. And when we're able to see it from that way, we no longer place ourselves as the victim. We place ourselves as a person in power who now is like, okay, well, I have the ability to create whatever I want with my life. So what's the next step? Like, yes, this happened in the past, but that doesn't have to also be your future. And they combine a few frameworks into their framework, which they cite them at the bottom. But one of the big ones is like the Hendricks Institute. And we've both read some of his books, The Big Leap and The Genius Zone, and also Byron Katie. She has a framework of Judge Your Neighbor. It's based on 4 simple questions. She has a bunch of great YouTubes on that, but all of these frameworks kind of like combined, and they're just amazing to use. And once again, just be an awareness of how all of this plays into your life, into your daily life.
So that was a big chew. That was a big elephant right there. And I wanted to keep it short and simple. I told you so that over the next weeks, months, we're gonna really go just one by one and talk about our relationship and how we've implemented each commitment, uh, and uh, and just share the world how it's helped us thrive in our relationship. And it's not always thriving, right? But it's also having awareness when we're not thriving and how we are holding ourselves back in relationship, and that's helped us as well. So,
Thanks for joining us today.
bye.
See ya.
Love you.